Welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Talk for SMEs podcast. I'm Matt Flanagan, guiding businesses in manufacturing, distribution, wholesale and e-commerce through the digital supply chain revolution. Tune in weekly for insights and strategies tailored for the SaaS ecosystem and beyond. Join us as we connect with tech enthusiasts and industry experts, sharing innovative approaches and actionable advice to help you navigate and excel in today's fast-paced digital landscape. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Digital Supply Chain Talk for SMEs. I've got Mr. Matt Lowry from ApprovalMax today. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, doing good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm all good. We should maybe call it the Two Matts show or something today. Used to be two Irish folk singers used to sing locally called the Two Pats. Maybe we could get some maracas out and recreate that, mate, if we wanted to. But yeah, thanks for spending some time with us today, Matt. And we're going to learn a little bit around ApprovalMax and sort of where it's from and who it's helping and what the future holds. But just for the listeners or the watchers, because on YouTube, tell us a bit about yourself, Matt.
Yeah, so kind of originally half English, half Canadian. So if you pick up any kind of quirk in the accent, that explains it early doors. So I kind of grew up both sides of the pond, as it were. First job, kind of fresh out of university, was in the legal industry, and then kind of moved internally to head of customer experience, completely separate to the accounting and accounting tech world, but it was really insightful just to see how a PLC that kind of did manufacturing as well as SaaS kind of operated, and a lot of manual processes there that now in hindsight, I'm like, how does a tech company PLC do that? But anyway, lesson learned. And after a few years, moved to a company called Fathom. So you kind of management reporting and forecasting in the account tech space. So set up the UK office of that with a chap called Andrew Jordan. So the two of us did basically everything customer facing for the UK office and spun that up. And I was there for something like 5 years, growing that, and then moved to ApprovalMax, kind of heading up their sales and customer success team. So in a similar space, really similar ICP actually as well to Fathom, which is great. Can still chat to the same financial controllers and FDs and the CFOs and partners, which is awesome, but doing a slightly different application.
Cool. So actually just touching on the geography then. So what are your sports? Because obviously like North American sports and UK sports, there's not much overlap, tends to be. So what's your sports?
Yeah, it's quite a varied history. So growing up, played a lot of kind of what I'd call proper for like English football, both sides of the pond, but also ice hockey, which I started in England and then played in Canada, and obviously two various different standards there. And now kind of retired from both pretty early, and now do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the past 12 years or something, which keeps me out of trouble.
Good stuff. Yeah. Okay. So you actually started ice hockey in England and then took it over to learn it properly in Canada. Is that what I'm going to get?
Yeah. So my dad's Canadian, which probably connects the dots here a little bit. So that's why, I mean, Basingstoke's not necessarily known for having the best ice hockey base ever, but that's where I started anyway. And then a couple of years in, went to Canada, where it's obviously like a religion over there. They're all fanatics about it, but great experience.
Cool. Right, onto the product then, ApprovalMax. Tell us a little bit about the history of it and like some of the main stuff that it does.
Yeah, so it was set up by three co-founders, I want to say 2014 now in this initial form, and kind of listed on the Xero App Store first 2016, I believe. So it's one of the earlier apps in the Xero space, which is great. But it was spun up out of an existing business where it's kind of an internal workflow tool where there was a lack of visibility, lack of traceability. There's a lot of internal tracing, which again, I think everyone listening can probably kind of empathize with that. You kind of, did Matt answer the email? Let me go and check and chase up. So that was the initial frustration. And then kind of the founders saw the Xero growth, and I kind of understood that actually tying it to the financial system gives it that kind of bedrock. So even today we have standalone workflows, so you can kind of have multi-step, multi-tiered approvals. You can invite different people in, limit what they can see, etc. And the standalone is really powerful. We use it internally, of course, for things like travel requests and invoices and stuff like that. But whenever you tie it to the the GL system, like so we integrate with Xero, QuickBooks Online, NetSuite, CIN7 Core, like the four kind of main systems. It just has that kind of innate increase in usability essentially. So we can put in your POs, your bills, your invoices, and we kind of triage it. So if it's a certain GL code, it goes to a certain person. If it's 100K, it might have to go to the board of directors or 4 or 5 different layers. If it's £10, might just auto approve it. So you can construct all of these different parameters in quite an easy to kind of use and understand field, so that you're not kind of constantly scrolling through a bunch of noise to get to the bit you actually need to action. That's like the general kind of overview. Under the hood, we do a lot more than approvals though. So there's things like fraud detection. So let's say you pull a bill from your GL system, goes through an approval process, goes back in. If anything changes in the GL system, it will then flag it to you. So the whole point here is to save time and to implement robust financial control, so you're not there, misfiring a payment. How are you going to get that back? Your personal reputation alone, if you hit it to the wrong bank account, there's some fraud. There's a huge amount to unpack there. But that's the kind of general overview of the software. In terms of a company, we're bootstrapped. 160 employees globally remote as well, which has its own kind of quirks and benefits. But in terms of like key markets, so kind of UK, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and North America, the ones that we typically play in.
Okay, interesting. And the approval, well, interested as an individual, it was a standalone system initially, and then it sort of branched out and saw the opportunity of like the Xero ecosystem and things like that. But I think approval is really interesting because, like some of the world that I've been in, when we've come across approvals, I've came across like 2 obvious ones, and this is going back to probably like 2016. But we've seen some of this recently. We've had the old stamps where it goes across someone's desk and they stamp it and they date it. That's still knocking around, so we're seeing that replaced. The other one that was really wacky was there was dockets on a wall which had the different approval status, and it went in that sign thing went into something. So it was either a team or anything like that. And obviously it can be done by T-card, it can be done by spreadsheet, it can be done by email. But it is quite interesting because you are right, there's so many permutations. If it's by customer, GL code, value, whatever it might be, ApprovalMax really starts to work in that. And in terms of like integrations, where's it playing at the moment? Because you mentioned like Xero. Is there any sort of other general ledgers and stuff it's working with?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, our kind of historical two have been Xero and QuickBooks Online. And then as time has gone on, we've just kind of continued to develop different integrations, but it's all basically been backed off of customer data. So to give you two relatively recent examples, so we integrate CIN7 Core as well as NetSuite. And both of those actually came from existing customers who would say, oh, hey, we're using CIN7. It'd be great if you could, pull in the POs from CIN7 so we can improve it here. So everything's under one hood. Same with NetSuite. So people were migrating. They're getting to the point where, they're on Xero QuickBooks Online. They're adding the apps, but at a certain point, sometimes there is that tipping point of actually they do need an ERP. And then they'll say, hey, we still want to use you guys, but you don't integrate. And then how do you? So as a result, the product team spun up these different integrations, and we kind of find ourselves playing in the area where, if you're a Xero or QBO entity and you've got 5 employees, one person's doing everything, like you don't need a multi-tiered approval system with too big for that sort of application. But as soon as you have kind of 2 or more people, you're processing a lot of documents, you're gonna you don't know where things are, and you need that visibility. That's where we come in. So we're typically kind of mid to higher end of what I'd call like the SMB market with Xero and QBO and CIN7, and then for NetSuite, we're kind of on the lower end of that market rather than like the kind of upper echelons of the mid market.
Yeah, that's super interesting as well, because I think in the Xero and QBO land, you sort of expect that approvals are like relatively basic. You get a basic approval process within there, but you wouldn't get this type of advanced. But obviously, we're seeing much bigger business just use Xero or QBO with an operational system, so it does sort of come into play. But I think there's an assumption as you go up the chain, like to a CIN7 Core or the NetSuite, that all of this is going to be covered. And I think it's interesting now that maybe it's not the case. So like CIN7 Core has an approval process. It's more advanced than a Xero and a QBO, but it's still not advanced to all of those different permutations around certain rules, around certain purchase orders, sales, etc. That you invoices that you might get. So I think like that's probably testament to like how advanced the product is. If it's really starting to spread the breadth of that of that platform set really that's coming along. So how have you navigated going from a Xero world to now you've got these mid-market and maybe you deal with partners, maybe you're dealing direct with finance teams? Like, how is that sort of, have you had to change much, or has that been like a bit of a different education for you?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of changes, not on the product side. That's fairly straightforward, which is great. And again, the kind of easy UI and quite quick and agile is kind of one of the kind of USPs that even when you move into that bigger mid-market space, even if it's similar, kind of it's so easy to use. And I think so I wonder if people still kind of gravitate towards us, which is awesome. But in terms of like the GTM is obviously different. There's not 5 million or whatever that there is now of kind of Xero subscribers and QBO subscribers and stuff. So as a result, you need to change it. You end up kind of coming against different competitors. But in terms of a sales cycle, a little bit longer, but the general principles are all the same. So it's like a matching. I always think sales is like a matchmaking exercise. Like you're on like a speed dating type thing. Like you have to be honest. Like, is it going to work and is it not?
Yeah.
And don't kind of sell the dream and then try and lock them into a 3-year contract and you
Yeah.
missold them. I hate stuff like that. So I think that is still the same. So what are the pain points? Pain points are typically going to be lack of visibility, ease of use, kind of time that is taking to actually get these approvals over the line. And we have like kind of different niches. Like we've got quite a strong audit report, for instance. Like if anyone's ever going to get audited, it makes sense to sign up even just for that alone. But in terms of the actual pain points and the impact, they're quite similar, which makes my life a bit easier, of course.
Yeah, so you haven't got an entirely different sell. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think as well, sometimes the assumption that bigger companies have got all of this sort of nailed down. And I know from definitely our perspective, we could be replacing a system, we could be replacing a bunch of spreadsheets, we could be replacing a bunch of whiteboards in general. So also it's that understanding, isn't it, that actually the thing I like about ApprovalMax in general is I think it makes quite a lot of impact quite quickly. A lot of products, like even we're in the world of CIN7 Core, that can take you 4 or 5 months to get it there, and there's a lot of like lead time. Where ApprovalMax, you get it implemented well within a week or so, you can start to really feel the difference of those approval processes flowing quite nicely and getting that information.
Yeah, we almost like it's almost been a negative in certain sales cycles, believe it or not, because we're talking to like some implementers right in the mid market, and they want it to take a while to implement because they can have more fees and all that sort of thing. And we're saying, oh, there's a free trial, you get signed up and you can kind of go and DIY. And they're like, well, hang on a second, this is how we want to commercialize it. So it's almost like too easy to use for certain implementers, which is always quite an interesting conversation to have. Because obviously for the end user, it's perfect, but there's a middleman sometimes that actually want to charge that markup.
Yeah. Have you got any, in terms of that going up the chain, in terms of from the standard, I know you've got the NetSuite and the CIN7 Core, those types of ecosystems that you get involved with, but are you feeling any pull towards any other systems? You haven't got to name them, but are you looking at any other sort of similar type systems where you think there's maybe a play there for you guys?
We always have these sorts of kind of strategic discussions around where do we take it. I think the thing which we're quite conscious about is what I personally call like shiny object syndrome. Like you can, and you see this all the time in other apps and also other industries where you walk past the stand and they've got all these nice headlines, and then you actually dig into it and they don't do a lot, or it's quite surface level. They kind of build really horizontal but not that vertical. And I think that's what we're trying to avoid. So there's that trade-off between for every integration we release, could we make the CIN7 Core or the NetSuite one better? We could, because there's that opportunity cost and the dev's time, etc. So I think that's what we kind of constantly weigh up, and that's also part of the reason why the NetSuite and CIN7 Core 2 in particular were driven by customers asking, because it's that clear validation. it's all well and good if we kind of go for an exec offset. Oh yeah, we're gonna release integration X. If no one wants it, we've wasted our time. So
Yeah.
whilst there is still some, like there's a few people on a short list that we're considering with discussions and stuff, but it's about kind of getting that balance right, because we don't want to build for the sake of a marketing tagline and a press release at the expense of actually making it easier for our customers day to day.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, because like in Zero Land, you've got, hundreds, if not thousands, of partners, haven't you? Right, which is an accounting. So there's that's market. When you come into the mid market world, there's not as many partners. There's not as the go to market's a bit more streamlined in terms of the opportunities that you've got there. So yeah, it is super interesting when you must be reviewing. Okay, what else could we have a go at that shortlist? But also, how do we get it there? And obviously, it's partners like us that we want to talk about it, but there should be other partners as well in this world, NetSuite or CIN7 Core, who are really starting to look at how the product can help.
Yeah, and I think a key part of that from the app's perspective is just kind of staying true to what like your USP, like what you do best. Like as an example, so we released two new releases at XeroCon London back in June. So ApprovalMax Capture and ApprovalMax Pay. So Pay is just open banking UK. Domestic payments, which is great, and we'll start building on that over time. And Captures OCR, but we intentionally have both as add-ons. So we're not trying to say, hey, we're going to replace all your OCR tools and we're going up against the likes of, your Dexter or whoever else.
Yeah.
But because that's not what the arena we play in, because we know our USP is in that approval process, the robust financial controls, where it's not a binary yes/no approval. That's actually really deep, and typically like the multi-site, kind of multi-organization Xero QBO file, or as you progress to NetSuite and CIN7. So as a result, you can use our OCR tool, but by design, you have to sign up to the main platform, because we know that OCR kind of, it's great, but OCR is all more or less the same, few differences, but the actual USP is that kind of approval piece. So I think as long as people stay true to what their USP is and what their customers came to them for in the first place, then it's a win-win.
So if anyone's wondering what OCR, that's the optical character recognition, which is basically scanning, right? So scanning the PDFs and taking that into the product where you haven't got to key all of those purchase order, purchase invoice type information in. So take all that in. So in Zero Land, that's quite a common thing, QBO Land. I think you come to mid-market, I'm not sure we're starting seeing that. I know there's a few in the CIN7 Core space sort of doing that, but it hasn't taken off. I'm not sure in NetSuite land if that's got there, but that's interesting. I suppose actually just thinking about that, you're saying about, so we've got these rules and it's done electronically. You log into the system and you get email notifications, different notifications. But I suppose in this world now where we are hybrid, sometimes in the office, sometimes not in the office, or like you said yourself, the challenges of being multi-region, I suppose that really plays into the products as well, doesn't it now? Because, it's not like I tap you on the shoulder and say, can you just check that invoice and make sure I can send it? There's much more of that now. It's going to be at the right time, you're going to receive the right information on the platform you want to receive it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think obviously it's all stored in the cloud in the same interface. You can pull all the reports, which is just a net benefit, even if you're in the same office. If you're doing it again, I remember the stamps and like signing it and knocking on the glass door and waiting for the CFO to let you in and stuff. So like, so even there, like the traceability with a bunch of binders, that doesn't really work. But in terms of like on the go, it's really flexible. And again, this is by design. So we've got like email notifications. You sign into the web app. We've got a mobile app, which is super slick. So I mean, I've literally been on holiday having a beer once, and someone puts a thing. Okay, yeah, I'll just hit accept on that. Job done. Obviously, not too many beers. I knew what I was doing, but yeah. So that is like, however you want to approve it, you can. And again, another relatively recent release earlier this year was a Slack integration. So we use Slack internally. So now if you're in Slack day to day, you can use Slack if you want to, but obviously some people choose not to. That's fine. So the idea is to be flexible to the individual user. So they don't have to think, oh, I've got to sign into this thing again. How do I do that, etc. And then that creates that natural friction that means the job doesn't get done. And the final point I make on that one is you can actually, if you're like an administrator, you can force the approval through. So if someone is just taking ages or they're off on sick leave or something, and you haven't put the delegate in, which you should do, but let's say you forget, you can force it through. So that's the other kind of almost bird's eye view picture of it, which you get, which is quite nice compared to having to dig through an inbox and thinking, oh, when did I send that email to Matt? And it's really hard to kind of do that, and takes a lot of time out of the day.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, what year we're saying this is 2014 originally?
So
The
started
product,
there, and then launched on the App
yeah.
Store 2016.
So we're 8 years into it being like a viable integrated product, but actually 10 years in. So it's had all the trials and tribulations and testing that it might ever need. So, I'm sure most of the permutations that get challenged when somebody's looking at it, you do know what it does do, to your point earlier, matchmaking, what it does do well and what it won't do. So it's a well-versed product, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the other quite interesting thing with ApprovalMax compared to other softwares, including other softwares where I've worked at, is that people use it every day, and like the daily use is always quite straightforward. Like there are like build a PO matching, we have got a public API even, but a lot of people don't need that, or they don't need it yet, so they kind of do the more basic day to day and instantly see that value, which is good. So on the free trial, most people activate the workflow, job done. So there's quite limited assistance that's needed. Obviously, we can provide it. That's absolutely fine. That's why we're here. But it's not that complex a setup where you need a consultant to come in and configure it for you and that sort of thing, which I think is it's definitely a benefit to people seeing that value.
Yeah, I think as well, it's I tend to find when talking about from the consultancy perspective, I think if it's a plug and play and it's a simple workflow, you definitely can pick it up. I think maybe when there's a third system comes in, we're tending to find that people are, if you've got like a Xero QBO and an ApprovalMax, then you bring in an inventory system or something third party, then the flows tend to go like a little bit like, where does this go and what should I be receiving back? And I think that sometimes we tend to find it's not the setup, it's the thinking of where is this going to go and just defining that workflow. We've picked up a couple of jobs where actually sometimes the workflow structure isn't actually quite correct, and the products will mirror that eventually. So, but in terms of setup, I agree. It's like it's not the most complicated system, but getting people to think of their actual workflow, because they do it day in, day out. Oh, if it's one of these, I just send it to so and so. If it's one of these, I sort it out. If it's one of these, we turn it to a meeting. The workflow's there. It's actually just extracted out of people sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point, because the tech is great, but the tech's an enabler at the end of the day. Like, it has to fit that process that fits the business objective and stuff. And I find that even internally, we run little workshops on our internal process. Okay, what's working, what isn't? And you find that once people take a step out and see it, like I call it like blank canvas, like completely new, would they do it the same way? Quite often they wouldn't. I think that's the benefit of obviously someone like yourself or the team coming in and say, oh, we've done this with the client, and it goes, this is the general data flow, the workflow, and you just kind of slot in the tech to enable that process.
Yeah, I think there's a term we use internally. I'll probably start using it on this podcast now. It's like data plumbing.
Yeah.
Like, we find we're just plumbing these pipes together as to what's going to flow through. Like, there's a bit more than just connecting it, but that tends to be a lot of the mindset. So if somebody is reviewing any type of workflow, like, get it written down first and foremost as to what you're trying to achieve, and then have a look at the software. Whereas we tend to be, sometimes people are trying to build it on the fly, and then it gets complicated in the system. So even if it's an old pen and paper, right, just get that workflow written down and see how it's going to fit and what the knock-on effects are as you do it. But yeah, it's super interesting. In terms of onboarding, like, I know we said like you can take the trial out, but in terms of if people want assistance and they've taken the trial out and they like the look of it, like how do you engage with people?
Yes, it's pretty flexible. So there's a free trial, as I mentioned. I've told everyone this for years now. Like, you can go to someone's stand at XeroCon or Kiwi Connect or whatever, or Intuit Connect now, and they can say, "Oh, like, it's great. It's going to solve everything," and then you kind of use it and you've not. So I think using it for the free trial is quite important, because you don't have to sign up to it out of the gate. And again, back to the mid-market differences, sometimes you have to sign up out of the gate, and I'm like, that's pretty big contract. Like, what if it doesn't work? You're stuck for a year, totally. You're double paying, like, nightmare situation. So I think having that free trial is super important. In terms of assistance, you got like the usual suspects. We got a knowledge base, have a sales rep who can onboard everyone during the trial. I always recommend, don't just get the kind of generic demo, also have a Q&A session. Like, go away, have a few action points. Okay, we want to do this, this, and this. And if anything doesn't work, just pepper the salesperson. That's why they're paid, basically. And then we also have a 24/5 support team. So if you would rather not jump on a Zoom call, that's absolutely fine. You can email in live chat as well to ask your question and get that assistance. And then like it doesn't stop at the sale. And I think sometimes this actually does unfortunately happen with certain companies, but we kind of almost, you get more comms after the sale with us. So we have a dedicated CSM who's there basically to help make it a success. So again, it's quite flexible. We're happy to have kind of monthly calls, but if the customers ask too often once a quarter works, that's fine as well. And they'll kind of send fairly regular info as well, just to make sure you keep getting the impact and the value from the software. Because obviously you're paying for monthly or annual upfront, but you're using it daily. You want to make sure it's still fitting your needs. You're not just kind of zombie walking towards the renewal without actually knowing that it's still doing the job. So we're quite keen on making sure that that's happening post sales as well.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we talked about earlier, if you're going to take the demo out and that however long that trial is that's available, if you turn up with some set workflows that you want to try and build, then you can really make use of that support pre-paying for it anyway, and actually probably get that matchmaking in terms of what you're really matchmaking is a requirement: does it fit or does it not fit? So if you've got those requirements written down and a rough workflow of what needs to happen, you can probably utilize your team straight away in terms of this is what I'm trying to build. And then if you've got third parties like NetSuite and stuff like that, you might need some people who know that world a little bit differently. But in terms of that, I think it's really important because we find a lot of people turn up with maybe I've got one requirement, which is the current problem I've got. Well, that's not actually a set of requirements. That's just one problem. I can solve that problem. But if I don't know all the other requirements, you're about to give me a list of other unknown requirements I didn't know I've got to satisfy. So I always tend to feel that you could really make use of teams like yours who've got onboarding teams that, really just turn up with that information that you want this system to actually fulfill the requirements it needs to fulfill, and then take the demonstration out and utilize it. Because I tend to feel people just pick that one problem, fix it, and it's like, oh, actually, it's great, it solved that one problem, but now I've got all these other stuff that I need to sort of get done. So it must be interesting for you guys how you get people to turn up.
Yeah, you can also flip that same logic. So we have, so we go directly to small businesses as well as to kind of partners, accountants and bookkeepers, and kind of resell it. And quite often people come to us with, one client who had this one comment that needs an approval. And okay, great, we can solve for that. But then you're paying for obviously the subscription, and it does a bunch of other things, and like that can add free value to you and the client, or it could maybe work for a subset of your clients. And I think kind of viewing everything again, kind of blank canvas. Okay, who is this going to help? What workflows will this help with? What departments should be involved, for instance? And obviously, I'm not saying kind of big bang day one of the trial. Yeah, everyone comes on and all the like that doesn't make sense. But you can stage it like a normal project with like the stage gates and get from A to B in a way that maximizes the values of the subscription, which I just think is a no-brainer. But yeah, sometimes people are like really fixated on that one initial thing, and it's about kind of reframing that mindset to basically get the most value out of any software, ApprovalMax or anyone else.
Definitely. I think as well, it's a resource type sometimes. So we see some of the businesses we work with, which are slightly bigger than you. A bit like you were saying, ApprovalMax probably wouldn't be fit for because there's a bit more complexity and need to it. But we tend to find there's also, you could be speaking to that person in finance who's a bit fraught and they're just trying to solve that one problem. They don't have the capacity to think about the bigger picture, just solve that one problem. So sometimes we find that where they're fixated because it's like, this is just the bane of my life right now. I need to get solved as well as do a day job in the hours I've got available and all this other improvement. So sometimes we find that try and take them out of that a little bit to go to really focus on it. That can be hard. But then other companies work to have people who are there to help transform it digitally in one way or another. And they will understand what you're saying, take it to the next level and go through it. So I suppose if you listen to this and you've got time and capacity to think about it, do it. If you haven't, try and make some time or speak to someone who can sort of build that, help you build out that requirement with you. And that could be an internal resource. It could be an external resource, just someone who can help you understand that. Cool. So we've heard all about ApprovalMax and some of our theories of this world. But if someone's listening to this and like interested and wants to know a bit more and wants to go and take that trial or get in touch with the team, like what's the best way someone can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the website ApprovalMax.com has everything on it. So to start your trial today, there's also, again, a contact sales, contact support buttons all over the website. I think sales at ApprovalMax will come to me or someone in the team as well. And if you just want to reach out on a personal level, you can reach out on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone.
Okay, well, I'll pop that. I'll pop that into the show note links as well. We'll get that popped in, all of those
Perfect.
different links that we've got there. I know you've been scooting, just before we finish, I know you've been scooting around. I saw you in London for XeroCon, and we were at DAS as well. And did you go off were you off to the States as well? Are you still all over the shop, darting around at different
Yeah,
places?
yeah, getting the air miles, and I think my New Year's resolution next year would be to go on fewer planes, funnily enough. But yeah, I was in Orlando for Scaling New Heights to meet some of our
Okay.
kind of American prospects and partners and customers there, which was great. And also heading to Nashville, XeroCon in 3 or so weeks now,
Yeah,
whenever it
right.
is,
August
and a
time.
bunch of other ones, which is good. So yeah, definitely getting a lot better at security at the airport, that's for sure.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, that's been great to chat today, Matt, and thanks a lot for your insights and your overview and your time, most importantly. So, cheers, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
No, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Wherever you're listening to this or watching this, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and like and share. If you're on any podcast platform, please subscribe, leave us a review. That'd be much appreciated. Until next time, I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers now.